Hi, I'm Andy. This is Project Carhaven, and today we're back working on the Legnum. At the end of the last episode, I was halfway through trying to pull the engine out, and I just got a bit burnt out, decided I needed to stop. I have now got all the wiring loom out the way, but as I was withdrawing it from the engine, all the conduit had just disintegrated, been baked for many years, and it just turned to crumbs. So as you can see, some of the wires completely exposed, some still have some factory tape. My solution for that is going to be some fabric Tessa tape. This stuff is temperature rated and abrasion resistant. It works pretty well in engine bays. So instead of trying to feed conduit over all of this cabling, which is likely to disintegrate again, I'm just going to wrap it in this. So as you can see, that's going to take a while. So I'll carry on doing this and I'll come back once I've got all of this done. Okay, well, so that is all the wiring harness taped up and protected now. It looks a lot better than it did before. No more crumbling conduit in place. There's still a lot of debris in the engine bay, which I'll take care of hopefully when I get the engine out. It's going to need a good wash. I've been looking and thinking about getting this engine out, and the more I look at it, the more I think I might be able to disconnect the transmission and engine in place and just pull the engine up and out, because now that flex plate's disconnected, I only need to move the engine that way this much and it should clear, I think, which means I can leave the transmission and transfer case in place, not have to drop them down, not worry about shafts, not worry about losing fluid. That's going to be a lot easier. So in typical male fashion of trying to find the easiest way to do it, I'm going to try that first. God. Oh. Man, it looks close to identical. That side one's not there. I wonder what that is. Anyway, just buzz these off. I mean, that's a good fit. That lines up perfectly. Well, the fan's all lined up. Brand new radiator, $65. I'm not even sure I could have got an oil cooler for that price. So this, for me, is a win. Well, I kind of ran out of time yesterday, so it's a new day, and I'm going to try and separate this transmission and engine and hopefully get this thing out. There's one bolt here I've already got out because it was holding in the wiring harness, and it had a bracket on there, so I needed to get that out of the way. From up here, right down in here is one of the bolts. That's fun to get to. And I've drawn a very rough map of the engine so I know where the bolts go when it comes time for reassembly. Before I go any further with those transmission bolts, I'm going to get these fuel lines off and out of the way. Ugh, that is dry.
Later.
Well, I think I've got all the top bolts out. There's still bolts at the bottom and engine mounts, but I think it's time to add a little bit of safety margin and get the engine crane in here and start supporting this engine. When I took that nut off, the engine shifted a little bit, so maybe it's free. The washer bottle bracket is going to be in the way of the engine mount bolt, so I'll have to take that out. Don't want to lose the bolts. Out you come. There we go. Well, those plans are foiled. One bolt. There's always one bolt. It's in the most ridiculous spot that you could ever believe. There's no way I can get a tool onto that. So unfortunately I do have to remove the transfer case in an attempt to get to it. So what that means is I have to get the drive shafts out of the transfer case. I have to undo this top ball joint and then use this as a lever arm to try and pop the drive shaft out on both sides, and then undo the bolts that are holding the transfer case onto the transmission, and hopefully I'll be able to lower that down. I may also have to unbolt the tail shaft that goes to the rear. Oh, that's hot. In order to get this out, I'm going to have to remove the brake line so I get enough leverage to actually get the shaft to come out of the transfer case. I needed to bleed the brake fluid anyway, so I guess that'll be happening now. Not right now. I'll do it after I get the engine in. So I got the CV shaft free and this goop came out. It's supposed to be grease. It's grease-y, but it just poured out like, well, you can see what it looks like. And the CV boot on the other side tore, so I'm going to need to order one of those and figure out grease. These jobs just keep adding up.
20 minutes later.
So I'm currently working on the bolts for the transfer case. There's not a lot of room to get in there, actually get some leverage on the wrenches to be able to turn the bolts. So I wanted to use something I could put over the top of the wrench and then hit that with a hammer to then get it to break free and start it. Everything would just slip off, so I needed like a forked rod. And so what I decided to do was use my breaker bar, take out the swivel. Now that can then fit over that wrench. I can then line it up and then get the bolts to break free. You know, it's not silly if it works. So in order to get that transfer case off, I need to remove the intermediary shaft between the transfer case and the transmission. To get to that, I need to take the drive shaft ends out of the transmission. It requires a certain tool used with a slide hammer. Looks like a crescent moon shape and I don't have one. So another method is to use a pry bar and a mallet. Obviously it puts all the force on a concentrated area. I'm a bit afraid of damaging things, but I've seen it done and work, so why not? Yes, I could wait for the new tool to arrive that I have ordered, but I'm impatient. Bingo! Well, it does look like it does pay to be patient, because this side was easy enough to get out with the pry bar and mallet method. The other side, completely surrounded by the transmission, can't get behind it to knock it free, so stuck waiting on those tools to arrive, which I have already ordered. For now, I'll just clean the grossness that used to be grease out of this in preparation to have it refitted down the line once I've got the engine out, got that one back in and all. There's steps. There's always many steps held up by other steps, but we'll get there. So after a short break and some contemplation, my lack of patience has kicked in again. And I thought to myself, well, I went and bought this brand new slide hammer. Maybe there's a tool end in that I can use to remove that drive shaft end, so it doesn't hurt to try. Handle end on here. One of the pieces like this. Maybe I can use this to hook behind and pop it out. We'll see. It's just a matter of finding a way in here, possibly. Can I get this in here? Oh, victory! Yeah. Get this off again. Oh, is that not quite enough to come out? Yeah, I can get it to here, but it's not quite far enough. I might have to take off this lower arm to get a bit more movement.
Later.
So I did end up getting it out, except it brought the shaft with it. This is from the driver's side, so only this part was supposed to come out. This clip let go instead of the one in here. So what was supposed to happen is this would come off, this would still be in the gearbox, and on the inside here, same as here, there's a threaded hole. I was then going to use the chain attachment and a bolt, put the bolt in there, and then use the slide hammer to get this shaft out. Kind of same result. Doesn't really matter, I guess, but it just didn't come apart the way I expected it to. Once that was free, I took out the lower bolts on the transfer case. I used a pry bar to push it out. I had it sitting on the jack. When I got it about 2 centimeters out, it was free. So then lowered the jack, then lifted that off of the jack onto the ground. The tail shaft's still attached, but that's sitting off to the side now, which means I can now access that one bolt left between the transmission and the engine. And that should be the last one to then start lifting this thing out. All right, engine mount off. Well, that's a victory I've been looking forward to for a long time. So as you can see now, the engine's out. There's plenty of cleaning to do in here. Ugh, yuck. So I'll get onto that and then start swapping pieces over onto the other engine that I need, and then start doing the reverse order of all this. So yeah, this engine bay is really filthy. I'm going to need to do a fair bit of work with some scrubbing brushes and degreaser and the pressure cleaner to try and bring it up to a decent standard before I even think about refitting the other engine. It also needs some work and other parts, so that's going to be a while away. I have started disassembling some pulleys off the old engine, and I found one on the new engine that has a bad bearing, but the one that's on the old engine is made of plastic and all chipped, so I've had to order a new pulley for that. A few other parts like spark plugs, may as well do it while you're in there kind of thing. So I think what I'm going to do is concentrate on getting this clean and then make a game plan for all the other bits and pieces I might need, and then go on a shopping spree. So it's going to be a bit of a delay on what's going on here, but hopefully it'll just flow well through this video. Well, there was plenty of greasy, oily build-up in there, and the degreaser's done a fairly good job. I haven't seen an engine bay that dirty before. I mean, it's an engine bay, it's going to get dirty, but that was like coated everywhere in a thin layer of oil or grease, which then attracted the dirt. That really stubborn, hard to move stuff was just everywhere, but it looks a lot better. I'm less likely to get super greased up arms when I'm crawling around in there now. Now it's a matter of moving on to the engine stuff. Now I am jumping around a little bit. I've got other things to take care of while I'm waiting for parts to arrive. I ended up getting a new roof trim to go at the back here and a new leather shift knob. So I grabbed those parts from Project VR4 in New Zealand. It's a parts breaker specifically for the Galant and Legnum VR4s. It's really easy to communicate with. The parts arrived quickly, considering he was in a bit of mischief on the racetrack just prior to me ordering these and actually broke his sternum. So shout out to the guys at Project VR4 for helping me out when you should be resting in bed. It wasn't as easy to find a wood grain shift knob, so I got a leather one. It was a good price. It's in perfect condition, so I'm very happy with that. Well, I need to get this engine off the engine crane because obviously I need to use it to lift up the other engine and fit it to the Legnum. So I went and bought a couple of cheap furniture dollies. I'm going to use a couple of bits of timber to sort of brace them together. One this size was going to cost about $100. These cost me about $17 each. They should be good enough, and if they're not, then I'm about to make a big mistake, but at least it's not a huge investment. Lay them down like so. A couple of bits of timber to brace them. Make sure the wheel's not going to hit. Now those screws are gone through. These are just to hold them in place for the meantime. I'll put other screws in from the other side and then take these ones out. Let's figure out some support for the sump. Alright, that's sitting on there. I'm going to refit the other parts. Now before I refit this inlet manifold, I'm going to take this idle air control valve, at least that's what I think it is, off, because that one met an unfortunate fate. Now you might be wondering why I'm putting all parts back onto the broken engine. Well, it's so it can be sealed up, and if I need any spare parts, I'll know exactly where to find them. I'm going to use this factory hose on the other engine. This here is why I'm going with the factory hose. This was on the replacement engine. It's a hard pipe with some joiners. I don't like them because you've got 4 hose clamps. There's more opportunity to create a leak rather than the factory hose only has 2 clamps. It's just my preference. I know this will probably work, but I'd rather use the factory hose instead. I think the last thing I need to get off this engine is this flex plate to be able to fit to the other engine, and I think this one can go away. Just going to figure out a way to strap this down to this rolling dolly setup. Alright, so before I get this engine onto the engine crane, I have a few things to do, like getting it back to the state the other engine was by getting the inlet manifold off. I need to change the spark plugs, get the intake pipe work off so it's out of the way for the strap. I have to fit that idle air control valve in. I'm also still waiting for a replacement pulley, but I can do that once it's on the engine crane. And once I do have it on the crane, I need to be able to access the rear to put the flex plate on. Before I do that, I still have to replace the rear main seal. I want to do that because last thing you want is to go to all the effort of putting the engine in, find out that seal's leaking, have to pull it all the way down to this point to be able to change it out. The Legnum runs NGK iridiums. I'm going to take one of these out at a time so I don't lose track of which lead goes where. Change the rear three, then do the front. And then in order to do the rear main seal, I need to get this off the stand. Man, that's in tight. Well, we got some BKR 6ESs in there. Should be some BKR 6 EIX iridium plugs. Change these over. It's a good thing of doing this anyway.
Later.
The front plugs have the coils, so I need to get those out of the way first. Rear main seal doesn't look like it's too bad. I can't see any evidence of any leaking, but we don't know how old it is. I do have a new one. We'll just take that out and replace it to save all the hassle. Very carefully put some screws into the old seal without trying to mar up the crank or the surround of the oh, that feels pretty firm on the inner side, so it probably would have leaked not too long after being installed. Genuine seal, here's the part number. Trying to get this to go in square is a lot of fun. By fun I mean pain. I'm going to use the old seal to protect the new one, rest it on here, knock it in with a dead blow hammer or something. Right, that seal's in. I've cleaned out all the threads for the bolt holes. It's a matter of finding out whether the flex plate holes are evenly spaced or whether it needs to be orientated one specific way. Yep, they certainly are designed to be set up one specific orientation. Just going to make sure all of these bolts start. And that brings me to a standstill because I'm still waiting on parts. I need another pulley with a good bearing in it, and I need to do those engine mounts. So I guess that's it for this episode. Thanks for sticking around and watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.